What's up, everybody? This is Jake Wynn, and I am here with one of my lovely co-hosts, Molly. How are you?
I'm great, Jake. It's me, Molly Keilty, and we are missing our beloved comrade, Justin.
We are, yeah, Mr. Very busy this time of year, and understandably so. He's got a lot going on.
I believe he said gestures at all the things.
All the things, everything happening. I'm just doing a little dance here. This is perfect for an audio platform.
I was just gonna say we should really go video.
At some point, maybe. Just like we might have an email someday. Oh, sore subject.
I made an email. We do have a happier topic than we had last time, which is good.
Yes. So, we haven't introduced the name of the podcast yet. So this is the Public History with Justin, Jake, and Molly podcast. Gotta get all of that in there. Welcome back. And yes, as Molly said, we have a little bit more of an uplifting episode than last time where we talked about what was in the news. And that was hard to talk about. So we're retreating to the 1770s and the 1780s today. And we are going to be talking about the HBO miniseries John Adams, and in particular episodes 3 and 4 of that series, where we are going to take a journey off to the halls of power of Europe with our narrow-minded Massachusetts man, John Adams, and his endlessly fascinating son, John Quincy. And we are going to talk about what transpires as the American Revolution is raging. So I'm excited about this. I love these episodes, and not maybe as much as the first two, but I think there's some really, really good stuff for us to dive into on this one. How are you feeling about this, Molly?
You're a big John Quincy guy, which I'm excited.
A big John Quincy guy.
I want to hear about because I don't know too much about John Quincy. But episode 2 was fantastic. I would say episode 3 and 4 actually like quite a bit as well. So I'm happy to talk about this. And yes, we're retreating to take a nice bite out of some comfort food that is the 2008 miniseries John Adams. When life gets tough, what you do is you put on an old HBO miniseries.
Where's the lie?
There's no lie there.
It's perfect. It's all we need. And this is like a comfort food for me. I will admit, I return to this all the time because of that fact. So yeah, so I get that. I feel it. I feel it in my bones.
And we get to talk a little bit more about my girl, Abigail Adams.
Yes. I was about to call her the queen, but there actually was a queen. So not the queen.
Not the queen.
Not the queen.
She's too, as we're going to get into, she's too like down and dirty, does the hard work. Like, she's not a queen. She's out
here planting cabbages.
Yeah. She's like a warrior farmer.
Warrior farmer.
Yeah.
I love it. We'll talk about some of her other skills today too.
Yes, I'm excited.
Very
I think
excited about that.
You're going to teach me more about Abigail.
Yes. She is so much cooler than I had ever realized before. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about that.
Fantastic.
All right. So if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is good stuff. You know you love it. You know you want to subscribe. Just do it. And you know what? While you're at it, give us a rating and a review. We want that too. Just do it. Just stop what you're doing right now and rate and review the podcast. We need more people to find us telling wonderful stories about Abigail Adams and why she's so cool. We need you.
I like how forceful that was. That's the first time you've been like, do it now.
Stop what you're doing. Pause this podcast episode and rate and review the show.
Do it, chumps. No, we're glad you're here, but please, in this verse, please review.
But we're really happy. We're really happy you're here. But do it.
Do it.
Rate the podcast. We're in like minute 5 and we yeah.
So whence did we leave episode 2 of John Adams? Because it's been a
Yes,
minute.
we have declared independency. Independence, woohoo, by Great Britain. But now we have to actually do that. So we're going to start with episode 3. So here's a little summary I put together. Give you an overview of the episode. Spoiler alert, these events happened 250 years ago. What are you doing? If you don't know, get over it. All right. In episode 3, John Adams and his son, John Quincy, my guy, depart for France on a diplomatic mission from the Continental Congress to the Kingdom of France. His mission is to secure a military alliance with King Louis XVI to fight their now shared enemy of Great Britain. After a perilous sea voyage in the middle of winter, Adams arrives at the American legation near Paris to learn that Benjamin Franklin had already secured that alliance. And this begins the topsy-turvy diplomatic career of John Adams, which sees him offend the French with his directness and offend Benjamin Franklin with his inability to engage in diplomatic niceties and to trust him. And this leads Franklin to working to minimize Adams before he is eventually discarded, with Franklin appointed as the sole ambassador to France. Adams then travels to the Netherlands, where he fails to secure a loan from the Dutch Republic, sends John Quincy off to assist the minister to the court of the Russian Tsar in St. Petersburg, and falls into a deep illness that sees him hallucinating and seemingly near death. This is John Adams at his lowest. So, how'd I do for summary?
That was fantastic. I'm not doing any more summaries. You were the summary guy now. I was going to say that, yeah, Franklin getting frustrated with John Adams is like, just be cool, man. Like, that's sums up Franklin this entire episode.
Yeah, it's so funny. This is like Ben Franklin in this is just so good of just like, he's like in his element. He's like, I'm here manipulating people, just, putting on my bumpkin hat and being a rough American and just playing up all the already existing French, preconceived notions about what an American is. And then you have John Adams show up and it's just like, this isn't going to work.
No. And okay, so my first question to you, can I dive? So
Yeah.
when it starts, he gets sent to France because it says something, I forget what it said exactly, but something about they're not too sure about Franklin's aid. And I didn't understand what that meant. Did they mean
Yes.
with Franklin?
Yeah. So there's a previous minister there. His name was Silas Dean. He is kind of universally recognized as not being good at that job. And Franklin is really going to replace him. It's Dean who is just like, if you read anything about our dear, dear friend, the Marquis de Lafayette, and how he gets to America is like in that process. Silas Dean was minister, and he's just basically being like, anybody that's coming from like any European nobility who claims they have some bit of military experience, he's like, sure, we'll give you a commission and join the military in America with George Washington. And all these Europeans just keep showing up and being like, where's my commission to be an officer in the Continental Army? And it makes everyone really angry. And then also there's like all kinds of financial mismanagement as well. That's part of the story. But it's another interesting piece that it's brought up about Franklin's aid. And that is a whole other subplot that is not tackled in this series at all because it's not really relevant to John Adams. But the aide to Ben Franklin was a British spy. So the guy that you see that's like ushering, him in to see Ben Franklin.
Yes.
And showing Adams the door on his way out. Yeah, he was a British spy.
Oh.
Edward Bancroft was Benjamin Franklin's assistant during his time in England, but also served as a spy for the British. Was a double agent, and he
My
was
gosh.
relaying everything to the British that was going on inside the American legation, which is like, was a secret that lingered for decades after the fact, but ultimately was revealed that he was a British spy. So lots of interesting things going on in the American legation. But I believe that's a reference to Silas Dean. I don't think that's a reference to Bancroft because they don't know that until much, much later that he had betrayed the American cause.
Oh, so they had no inkling about it at all.
Correct.
Okay, so as good as Franklin is in this episode of being, like you said, he's like, oh, you want a stereotypical American? Let me put on my, what was it, a bumpkin hat? And like kind of Jimmy Crockett.
Furs. He's putting on furs, just to be like, yeah.
He's like, I'm a frontier guy. And they're like, yes, Franklin, we love you. He wasn't that good because he didn't know that his assistant was a spy for a long time.
Yeah, there was some inklings that Franklin may have known, but nevertheless, I mean, that's also knowledge that Franklin could utilize too if he suspects him of being an agent. That could also, color some things as well. But it's not revealed until like the late part of the 19th century that Bancroft was a British double agent. This is long after the participants are dead, that this is discovered when it's revealed through British papers that this was the case.
Oh my gosh, Bancroft. Okay, I gave you an A+ on your summary, but I'm going to give you an A, and I'm going to see if you know why I knocked you down.
Okay.
From an A+ to an A.
Bring it.
Can you think of anything you might have left out?
I left dearest, wonderful Abigail out of this. And so I'm the worst.
What was typical? What was Abigail doing while her husband, first he's in the Continental Congress, and then he comes back and she's like, oh, yay. And he's like, just kidding. I'm going to France. And I love how she's like, okay, you're taking one of the kids. Because that is so relatable.
Yes. She's like, I can't handle all of these children. Please take your son with you. I do not want him here. No, she loved John Quincy.
And okay, also, this brings me up to the kids because I did a little bit of light digging. Mm-hmm. Is it Charles or Thomas? There's Charles. Is it Charles, Thomas?
Charles is older, and then Thomas is the younger.
So Charles was very upset. You could tell that when John was leaving, he was like, oh, I'll miss you. And it was like very clear that Charles was the emotional one. And I was like, oh, the middle child is the emotional one. I wonder if this could go wrong. So I looked up his life, and he had a little bit of a tragic life, and it makes total sense. He, I think, died of alcoholism in his 30s or something like that.
You've spoiled this for yourself. This is a whole thing.
Is it?
Yes, it's a whole thing.
In the later episodes?
Yes.
Okay, then never mind.
This is all foreshadowing.
Oh, I'm not saying anything.
All foreshadowing.
Okay, this is just to say that this miniseries is so good then, because I was already like, oh, this kid is emotional and this is not going to go well for him later in his life.
Correct. You are correct.
So what was Abigail doing while John was in France, not doing a good job?
Well, she's planting some seeds. She's doing that. She's meeting with French military officers and our old pal Benjamin Rush as well. And mostly she's not hearing from her husband.
Which makes me so mad at him. And I think, is it in this episode where she wakes up in the middle of the night and is scrubbing the windows? I believe so.
Yep, scrubbing the windows. Yep.
Yes.
And Nabby's like trying to talk her down, and she's not having any of it.
No, and Nabby is such a good kid. That scene was really heart-wrenching because she's obviously just like so distraught, and she keeps it together. She's a strong lady. Welcome to my Abigail Adams podcast. She's the best woman of this time, and she's like doing the only compulsive thing that she can do, and it's like clean more. Like she doesn't do something that's going to be counterproductive to like living her life and having to hold it down. She's like, I'm going to scrub these windows in the middle of the night, and Nabby's like, how about you go to bed? Like she actually gives her good advice, and she's like, get out of here. It's very heart-wrenching. Oh, Laura Linney, Abigail.
So good.
And John's just another strike in my book.
Yep. He's just being miserable in France.
He just can't make any friends.
He's not. I mean, he'd be a tough guy to be a friend with,
Oh yeah.
It's just like very demanding, and yeah, it's all about his work. It's tough.
Yeah.
What did you think about the? So we get our sea voyage. What do you think about our journey across the Atlantic in the winter months?
I'm going to tell you, I didn't love it. I don't love a sea voyage in that time frame writ large. Not a fan. I don't like seeing the people get sick. I don't like seeing the conditions. It does not look like a good time. And then you add the battle, the mini battle onto it, and the man whose is it his leg gets blown off?
Yes.
Yeah, not a fan. I have to say, I'm not a squeamish person, but upon second rewatch of this episode, I fast forwarded because
Yeah.
I said I know what happens. I don't need to see that again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty rough. But yeah, caused by a cannon misfiring. So not actually caused by enemy fire. You'll note that they do show that the cannon kind of explodes itself, and rips part of an officer's leg off. And yeah, so you get the amputation scene. I say that as somebody that used to work in Civil War medicine. That you get the pre-anesthesia version of amputation. So yeah, go as fast as possible, and then you see the results of what can happen when patient dies of blood loss and shock. So yeah, not a fun time.
I was thinking about you during this scene and then the end scene of this episode when John is, like you mentioned, at the brink of death. And I was like, oh, there's a lot of health stuff in this. And I remember you saying how much of like history is like there's all of these things are the result of either sickness or illness or whatever is happening at the time. I never thought of history that way. But we just lived through the COVID pandemic, so I guess I should.
Yeah, no, but that's just such a good representation of how quickly we all forget. I mean,
Mhm.
just like, you don't know how good you feel until you're sick. And then it's like, this is the worst thing ever. And then as soon as you're better, you're like, oh, it's like a day of like, oh, I feel so much better. And then it's just like already out of your mind,
Yeah.
gone to other things. Yeah,
Kinda like how it's warm finally, and I'm like, "Oh, the depression is lifted. Everything's gonna be okay."
exactly. Exactly. The winter doldrums are over. We are in our spring blossoming.
So, my next question is, why did they send John to France knowing how undiplomatic he is?
Yeah, so this gets to a little bit about what they don't talk about in the series because they focus on the relationship with Franklin, which I think is the most important piece of this. And the fact is that Adams was not a good diplomat, nor did he have a grasp of French at this point. That does change, not something we see in the show, but he does learn enough French to be able to operate once he's there. So he's kind of immersed in the language that he's able to be able to speak in French, unlike what we see in this episode, where it's quite embarrassing. Also, just how I felt when I went to France as well in that moment, not having to talk to the king, but nevertheless, that feeling it resonated with me greatly. But he had other skills. The diplomatic legation was a mess in Paris. Franklin was not he's this charismatic guy. He's not necessarily an organizer or
Hmm.
somebody that was like minding the books and like keeping track of the money. He's being friends with everyone and pretending to be this American rustic and getting, portraits done of himself. He's not the day-to-day manager. That's really what Adams provided, was like, get this legation in order, put its books into order, get its finances under control, and try to organize these efforts. And he wasn't alone. There's another guy named Arthur Lee that's there originally, who Adams did not like as well. He viewed him as kind of a paranoid dude. And then he ends up going to another part of Europe, and they send Arthur Lee out around the same time that Adams is kind of kicked out and not given a job, when Franklin becomes sole minister to France. So he does come with skills. He does organize, and that is something he is very effective at while he's there. We don't see it in the show because it's not something that's easy to be like, oh, well, he organized the books and was a good manager. But when it came to the diplomatic part of it, yeah, it was not his strong suit. It's one of the most cringy scenes in this whole series is that him meeting with King Louis.
Oh,
It's just
God.
painful. It's painful.
It's so bad. I feel so bad for him. And yeah, it's a better story to tell where you see Franklin being like so charismatic and just like taking his bubble baths and having his portrait taken with that one lady who was she a real person, by the by?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then Adams being just, yes, so out of his depth. And you just being like, oh, no, no, go back to Massachusetts, please. Write to Abigail. She'll tell you what to do. But I will say that one of the things that I really liked about him in this episode was when they were at the, I don't know if it was a Marquis's house, the account's house, when they were having dinner, one of the first dinners he sits down with. And he says this line where it was his very Puritan upbringing where he's like, I'm doing what I can do so my children can study math, so their children can study art. It was just so practical, and it made me like him because I was like, you're a good dad. Like,
Yeah.
you are a good dad and you are a good founding father.
And the French aristocrats are like, nah, bro. No.
No.
Tell us about the art of love.
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
like, they're not of the Puritan sensibility at all. But I don't generally like a lot of the things he does in this episode, and I really liked that.
Yeah, he is just like he's floundering.
Yeah.
Floundering.
Floundering. Yeah.
Foundering?
Floundering. He's a foundering father.
A floundering father. It's been a long day.
And
God.
when he makes that like impassioned speech about doing what he can do now so his grandkids or whatever can study art, Franklin is just like you can see him being like, okay, how's this gonna go?
Yeah.
Franklin's like the cool older brother that like brings him to the party. And then he's like, oh God, just be cool, man. Just be cool.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think it's I can't remember if it's a count. It's Luzerne. It's the other guy that's there, the French kind of minister. And he's just like, yeah, he's got it all figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, the French fashion of the time, I'm not a fan of. Like the caked white makeup. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's so funny. This is just, what you see of aristocratic French life is so unappealing in this. And it's, just the way they eat fruit. It's just like grotesque.
It's really, it's too much. I love watching like period pieces and thinking that like that was hot at the time. Do you know what I mean? And like this was in style at the time. And now it's just I always think about how style has changed. It's like, oof, yes.
Yeah, and then there's also the fact of, it's so hard to see that and square it with the fact that the French military is one of the preeminent militaries of the time, that they're just like, French army is, I mean, just a few years away, they're going to conquer most of Europe. And it is hard to square that when you see the fashion, the nature of aristocratic life. It's also easy to see why the people were like, yeah, I can't afford bread and I'm going to cut your heads off.
Yeah. Also that it was like, oh, you guys, you like when he met the king, I was like, my man, you better like it while you got it. 'Cause you are not going the right way.
Yep. We know what Louis doesn't know.
Yes. They were in a real almost eat the rich time.
Yes. Gonna end up with your head in a basket.
So when John does not do the best job in France, was Franklin writing back to the people in the States being like, this guy's got to go? Was he basically like, mm-mm?
Yeah, it wasn't going well. And it's Adams's relationship with the Count of Vergennes, who is kind of the person in the French court who is really pushing this American effort and kind of as revenge for the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War, to get back at the British. This is an opportunity, and he's funneling money secretly as well, and then very openly through the alliance. And this is where Franklin's really good at this game of like, how can you push them enough to get concessions, to get them to put in money, to get them to put in warships and soldiers, but not push them too far as to offend them and make that less likely. It's It's a delicate balancing act.
Hmm.
And Adams is just like all in. He's like pushing, and just like clearly offends the Count de Vergennes, which was a real thing. They did not get along in part because of Adams' pushiness and brusqueness about it. And yeah, ultimately, this is going to lead to Adams not being recalled, but losing his role as a co-minister with Franklin. And this is where the timeline gets a little messy from the real world events and what we see in the show. What we see in the show is he's shown the door, he gets the letter, and he charges in to Ben Franklin sitting in the bathtub, which, again, this episode is full of the most cringy moments. Bursting into playing chess nude in the bathtub. Gross.
Yep.
And yeah, we see Adams then kind of being shown the door and being sent off elsewhere in Europe. And then we see him in the Netherlands. In reality, the timeline is a bit different. Adams goes back to Massachusetts. He actually leaves. He leaves Europe and he goes home. And he received no instructions from the Congress. Franklin receives instructions that he is now the sole minister to the court of King Louis. But Adams is going to return to Massachusetts frustrated, upset, offended by not being referred to in those orders and being given no choice, no job, essentially. And so he returns to Massachusetts, which is actually really good for American governance, because what he does when he's back in Massachusetts is help to draft the state's constitution. And he actually lays down many of the ideas about American government that are ultimately going to be picked up on in the Constitution. On this idea of different chambers of government, different multi-house, multi-step legislature is going to be part of that. And so he really lays down these ideas of checks and balances is really his focus, and how you balance ambition against ambition, something that he was very familiar with as a very, very ambitious person himself. So he's there in Massachusetts for the drafting of the state constitution. He was only in France originally for 6 months before he leaves. So a lot of what we see there is actually combined from 2 separate visits to France. He is going to go back to France, and he has a mandate from the Congress this time to negotiate an end to the war and also to begin commercial ties with England in its aftermath. And so the trip actually goes quite badly. When they're sailing, they end up getting blown off course. They actually have to land in Spain, and the ship was in really rough shape. And this time, he has not one son, but 2 with him. He actually takes John Quincy with him, and then also Charles does go with him. And then they travel overland from Spain to Paris, and there are further negotiations between Franklin and the Count de Vergennes, and Adams is in the midst of all of this. And then the Count de Vergennes is just basically like, I am sick of this dude. Like, I can't work with this guy. And then Franklin is going to write very openly and critically of Adams to Congress, which gets read in front of Congress. And that is the final break. And that is when we're going to get into 1781, when Adams is going to leave, head towards the Dutch Republic, the Netherlands, which is where he goes next.
So we don't see Charles in this miniseries go to Europe at all with him at this point.
Yeah.
Does Charles go with John Quincy to Russia?
No, at that point, once they're settled in and Adams is going to fail to secure a loan from the Dutch Republic at that stage, then Charles is homesick and wants to go home. And at that same point, John Quincy and I can't remember his name, is going off to be the minister to the Tsar of Russia. He's going to ask to bring John Quincy with him. John Quincy goes, like the age of 14. This is crazy. And then Charles goes home. He gets on a ship with a friend of Adams, and they sail back to Massachusetts. So then John's by himself. So this lends itself towards, it's not just it's sickness, likely malaria, which was a huge problem. They're in The Hague. So that's 2 episodes and 2 references to The Hague in the last 2 episodes. And he is going to come down with malaria, quite likely. Could have been typhus too, but it's going to be combined also with him being in a deep, dark depression as well, that he has failed both in his service to his country. His family's now scattered to the wind, and he feels like a failure. And the cause of the country was still very much up in the air at this stage. And so we leave him at the end of episode 3 in a really pretty dire place, which was I remember watching this for the first time and being like, absolutely, I think my worst, like you were grossed out by the amputation scene. I was grossed out by sick John Adams at the end of this.
Yeah.
It's quite like, it's like hot and just like they're bleeding him. It's ugh. No thanks.
I know. They don't have some Vicks up in there to like relieve him or some like Hall's cough drops. Like he is not doing well. And you know what he's not doing during this time period? He's not writing to the love of his life, his best friend. His probably could have helped him, could have sent him some letter saying, it's going to be okay. You should probably be nicer to what's his face, Vergine, Count de Vergine. He's not writing to Abigail. Now, my question to you is, do we have letters? Like, was Abigail still writing to him during this time period?
This I don't know. There is some correspondence between them. This might be a good way to get into the business part of this if you want to talk about that now.
Yes. You mean Abigail's business acumen?
Yes.
So Abigail is not hearing from John. She has all the kids. She's running the farm. What else is she like? What is she doing during this time that he's in France and the Netherlands?
Yeah, so this was something I'm currently reading a book about both Adams presidencies and their view of public life and how they kind of helped shape the early republic, and more importantly, how they didn't shape the early republic, because it doesn't end up being what they want at all. But a big part of this and like getting the makeup of these two men's character is a lot of it's talking about Abigail, and Abigail being kind of this anchor for all of them that's kind of like, holding them to earth in a way that they needed desperately to be held to earth, and like their moral compass as well, and somebody who they look to for leadership in any number of different ways. So this is something we don't see this at all in the show, but what is going on in the background is Abigail's keeping this family financially afloat because they're not paying. We hear, Congress isn't paying any of these people very much, and the money is questionable in its worth anyway. And so she has to keep this farm going back in Massachusetts. And this is not in the show at all, and I wish it was because it's fascinating. So Abigail is going to kind of come up with a business after the alliance with France goes through. Understandably so, the people of Massachusetts, which has been liberated from the yoke of the British after all the cannons were brought to Boston, and the British go away, they go to New York, and they leave Boston alone. So it's on its own. And they're very vehement in their support of the American cause. And they are thrilled by this idea of an alliance with the French. And so French goods become valuable. People want French wares. They want French furniture, French art. And it just so happens that one of the prominent members of their community is serving as a minister in Paris, and so can purchase things and send them home on ships to Abigail, and then Abigail can sell those. And those French goods that they're going to make a tidy sum of money on. So she's kind of becomes like she's in the import-export business.
Yes.
And she becomes an importer. And so some of that money is going to be utilized to then invest. And so how are the Americans funding this war? Before we get the money coming in from, the French, the Dutch Republic, other countries in Europe, they're afraid to send money. That's the subtext of actually, it's not even really subtext. It's overt text in the negotiation we see with the Dutch. They don't want to piss off the British, and the British Navy, it could wreck the Netherlands, a coastal country. And so they don't want to sour relations. And so people aren't willing to lend money to the United States. And so they have to raise that money internally. And one of the ways they do it is the old American story. See this in World War I and World War II. They sell bonds, war bonds. And because there is no United States government as we know it now, or even the Articles of Confederation are going to go into effect as the war is still ongoing, but it doesn't have a strong central government. So each of the states are raising money. And so Massachusetts is selling bonds. Abigail looks at those as a great investment. And so she is going to take the funds and put them into some of these war bonds. And with the possibility of some really great returns. It's super risky to do this, which is why John is like not in favor of this at all. He doesn't like those stock jobbers. We'll see that in the future. He doesn't like some of the speculation that is going to do some damage to his family in future years. And so he looks down upon this. However, Abigail sees it as a wise investment. And so she plows a lot of the money into these bonds, which are going to have a major payoff in the years ahead, which we can kind of hold on to, leave that in our hat until we get to episode 5, because it has a lot to do with Alexander Hamilton and his ideas about a Treasury Department and creating a national debt. And we will talk about that in when the nation gets a new line of credit, a financial diuretic.
You took it. You did it.
I stole it from you.
There's going to be more Hamilton in our future. There's going to be some more bar spit. Okay, so listen. My girl, so he's sending goods back to Abigail. She doesn't take them for herself. She's not like, oh, this is great. She's like, let me sell this. So that's number one, shows her character. Shows like how practical she is and what a moneymaker she is. Then she becomes like a futures trader and she's like, I'm going to buy these bonds because I know they're going to have a good return for my family. Even though her husband, who is a pretty smart dude, and a lesser person could probably be swayed and be like, okay, I won't do that. She's like, nope, this is a good thing and I'm going to do this. Is there anything Abigail Adams can't do?
It's remarkable. She's kind of, when I went down this rabbit hole, it's like a lot of writing about her being kind of the first woman investor in American history. And that makes sense because there are all kinds of rules about women and property at this point. And so she had to find workarounds to do most of this investing, working through family members, other family members as kind of her agent, working for her husband. Even though he often disagreed, he wanted to put all the money into property. And she was just like, it is questionable if that will even return any profit at all. And so she goes with the more risky, but ultimately profitable route of going into the futures markets.
I love it. I know. And I'm on my industry kick right now. So I'm like just thinking about how risky that is and what a good payoff it is. And I was also thinking about how we watched The Patriot, your favorite movie, and how they depict the women in The Patriot, and how they're like all these women that need to be saved. You know, they're left behind in the war and they're totally vulnerable. And it's the men who have to come in and rescue them, often in a violent way. And this just blows that out of the water. I mean, her husband is literally across the Atlantic Ocean. And she's not only holding it down, she's raising the kids. She's still depicted as like running the farm.
Yep, which she did.
And Adams is a farmer too. So he like that is obviously very important to him. She had to keep that up. And she's also doing this. And she's not hearing from her husband.
Yep.
So this is now an Abigail Adams fan podcast.
Yes, as it should be.
You can have your John Quincy time and I'll have my Abigail Adams time.
Okay, that's fair. He gets a lot of his sentiments from her, I will say, especially his view of slavery in the later part of his life.
I know, as you were starting off telling me about her entrepreneurship, I mean, I never thought of her that way too. Like she is the anchor to not one, but 2 presidents.
Yeah.
So need we say more?
Correct.
So we end in the darkest time Yeah, it was a pretty
Yeah.
gnarly malaria scene, very sweaty, looked
Yeah,
very,
very sweaty.
very
Very
sweaty.
sweaty.
Do you have any other thoughts about episode 3, or should we do the recap of episode 4?
No, I think I'm good to dive into episode 4.
Okay,
You ready for a
do you have a sweet recap for us again?
I do. I do.
Yes, let me hear it.
I did forget to mention one thing from episode 3, which is how it really ends, which is American victory at Yorktown.
Oh, yes, 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 yes,
Woo!
yes.
Episode 3 ends in victory for the American cause. We learn, as Abigail does and her children through letters, that George Washington is successfully defeated the British along with the assistance of the French at Yorktown, Virginia, and the war is screeching to a halt. So, done with episode 3. Now on to episode 4. So, yay, America! Victorious! John Adams learns that the combined French-American forces defeated the British at Yorktown, and the Revolutionary War is drawing to a close. He is revived, secures a loan from the Dutch Republic, and is brought back into the diplomatic fold. He returns to Paris. There he is joined by Abigail, who comes to Paris and confronts John about his lack of correspondence over the years. Adams is joined by Thomas Jefferson, where their relationship blossoms with the help of Abigail. Franklin brings news that Adams has been appointed as ambassador to Great Britain, and John and Abigail depart for London. We also get in this episode my favorite scene in the whole series, where Adams meets King George. And John Adams is attacked in the British press as vain and overbearing. And the couple eventually returns to great fanfare back to Massachusetts and are reunited with their children. We also see in this episode, which covers quite a bit of territory, Adams is then elected as Vice President of the United States under the new Constitution and is present at George Washington's inauguration. Episode 4.
Oh, you could just do this for a living, my friend. When I started this episode, I texted you and Justin and I said, I feel weird, but I want Abigail and Thomas Jefferson to kiss because their charisma when she first comes to France, I mean, it's no surprise. She arrives in France. And first of all, I love the intimacy between her and John when she's like, they're kind of like keeping their distance and he's showing around the house and she's just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then they finally get alone and he like melts down and is finally vulnerable. And he's like, I didn't write to you because I was so ashamed of myself. And that's so relatable.
Yeah. No, I get it. I haven't sent texts back in a similar state, but it wasn't going to be 4 months until it could get delivered.
I excuse the sexism, but I feel like it's a very man thing to do. It's like I'm feeling not my best, so I'm going to retreat and I'm going to isolate. Whereas I feel like a woman would just say, hey, I'm not feeling so great. I need some support.
I like to think that I've learned a little bit how to be more like that, but I will admit to descending back into John Adams levels of lack of correspondence in tough times.
But I love her arriving in France and she's kind of a fish out of water because she's a Massachusetts gal, but it takes literally no time for her to charm Thomas Jefferson and he just falls like not in love, but just like in friendship love with her. He's like, oh, this is my girl. And he's like, it's like no surprise to anyone. And I thought their relationship was so sweet. And I started to do some digging on, because I know Jefferson and Adams kind of part ways at some point in their life before they get together. And it looks like she did too. She also parted ways with him. And that made me sad because they seem to be such good bros, like in France together.
Yeah. There is some, and this is something that I love about this whole series, really. And I'm not, as has been talked about before, I'm not an 18th century person. This is not my time period that I most connect with. However, one of the things I am most interested and intrigued by this time period is just the characters. And the characters, the founding
You got it.
the floundering fathers, that generation of people and these individuals that keep cropping up through the early part of the American story from declaring independence and the war and the early republic. I'm just fascinated by how they're all woven together.
Mm-hmm.
And it is something that I didn't really engage with, admittedly, until Hamilton.
No way.
Yeah, so Hamilton was really my roadmap to how these characters are all connected and that the battles that they fight become the battles that are going to run as a thread through American history. And yeah, it opened my eyes to this. And you see that in this episode too. And I watched this obviously way before Hamilton ever existed as a concept or as a musical. And I just didn't have that as kind of the drawing me in. And now watching it back many times since having listened to the soundtrack and seen Hamilton, it's just so funny to see it because each of their perspectives is so different. And what I love about about the media in this, comparing the experience of John Adams and what we're going to see and coming up in the next couple episodes and laying it side by side with Hamilton and even overlaying it, you actually get a lot of the same stories being told just from different perspectives. And it's kind of the same here. It's like reading a biography of John Adams and then you read a biography of Thomas Jefferson or of George Washington or of Benjamin Franklin, and you get all of these perspectives of the same things happening to the same people, and oftentimes they're in the same place. And it's just this like perfect melding of history of like what makes history so great and so fun to me is that you have all of these different perspectives and we're all people and everybody experiences these events differently and comes away with different perspectives and different takeaways, and it just makes this so much fun to understand these people as individuals. And that's what I love about this episode and these characters.
I could not have said that better myself. That's why I love it too. When she meets Jefferson and you do totally see. And I think that was such a beautiful thing about Hamilton the musical is it brought it into like in your face normal people just like me and you having cabinet rap battles, but for real, like totally different ideologies and different perspectives and different personalities, and how the different personalities like either meshed or butted against each other. I think that's also why I love this episode, and I loved episode 2 in the same way when Adam starts to meet Franklin, starts to meet Washington, and you kind of start seeing it start to cook. And I love, and I can't think of his name now, but the actor that plays Thomas Jefferson in this, he's so good. He played Stannis Baratheon in Game of Thrones, and he was like
Stephen Delane.
Stephen Delane. So Stephen Delane, Tom Wilkinson, and Laura Linney and Paul Giamatti all were nominated. So Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, and Abigail were all nominated for different awards for this. And I was like, totally. Because I looked it up. I was like, he had to have been nominated for something. Stephen Delane does such a good job as Thomas Jefferson. And he's so sad. And Abigail picks up on it right away when she meets him because his wife has just passed. I don't know if the timeline's a little wonky, but his wife and his kid just passed away. And to see her totally, want to be his friend and try to ask him how he's doing, it's so nice. I loved it. That's why I was like, just kiss already. You guys have you guys have such good chemistry.
Yeah, it's interesting too. There's a lot here that does get left out. Something kind of forgotten about this. It gets brought up later in the series, so we can maybe talk a little bit more about it when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
But with Jefferson in France, this is where the Sally Hemings story really, really takes root when she is, of course, an enslaved person, say in air quotes, owned by Jefferson, who is essentially a half sister to his wife who had passed and was very light skinned, looked very much like his wife. And this is where that story begins of some kind of a not consensual because of the circumstances of the time, not consensual sexual relationship between Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson that is going to result in one of the ultimately never fully out there scandals of early American political history. We see in Hamilton, of course, the Mariah Reynolds situation that brings down Hamilton. Well, at the same time, there is a scandal that is consuming uh, Jefferson as well, that ultimately is going to be covered up for 200 years until DNA kind of confirms this relationship between Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. But this is really where that begins. That story begins. We don't see Sally Hemings at all in this, but she's there, and that is something that is going to crop up a little bit later in the series as we proceed into the politics, the nasty politics of the early republic in the episodes to come. But I just want to put that marker down there about that this is something we're going to be talking about again.
Yeah, after Abigail says, "Oh, his wife died and his child died," I immediately was like, "Okay, who is his wife?" So I go and I look it up, and then his second relationship was with his wife's half sister, and I knew about Sally Hemings, and I knew she was an enslaved person. I think she was like 14 or something. So the non-consensualness of the entire situation
Yes.
is horrific.
Yeah.
But I had no idea she was his first wife's half sister. So on Women's History Month, I'm going to be not only an Abigail Adams #1 fan, I'm going to do some research into Sally Hemings because I think that's insane.
Yeah, it's definitely the one of the elements of slavery that oftentimes gets talked about in this. There's lots of people that say, like, oh, judge them by the standards of their time and all of that nonsense, when we're like, no, slavery is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those areas where it's like people in that time period were like, this is a moral disaster. This is so wrong. And it oftentimes comes down to that relationship, not a relationship, the abuse
Mm-hmm.
of enslaved women that are basically being forced into having children with with their owners, again in air quotes, that they're enslavers, and having children. And then there's these children running around who are enslaved by their fathers, and it's just, people are writing about this and commenting it at the time of how wrong and how sick this is. And yeah, again, we'll put a note down there that we'll talk more about this in the future.
Okay, so this is my last question to you, and if
Yeah.
we hear about it in the future, then just say, "I'll let you know." You'll find out. Does Abigail get pissed about this? Because my girl doesn't like slavery at all. So does she know about this, and does she get pissed about it?
It does come up in her presence.
Okay, that's all you need to tell me.
It's more of the personal affronts are going to anger her more,
Mm.
and the political maneuvering and what he is going to do politically is going to bother her far more than this in particular. But it's just more evidence of his lack of character, as she would see it.
Okay. It's a little bummer to me. I wish she made some sort of big stink about it, but that's okay.
And she may have. I will admit to not knowing as much about that element. I will endeavor for it in the future, just to look through there. Maybe we can talk about that as we watch this relationship devolve
Yeah.
in the years of the early republic. We can maybe talk about that in the future, just to dig in a little deeper.
So you mentioned one of your favorite scenes is when they're in France and they go to Britain because now he's the ambassador to Britain, and it is the worst. You thought King in France was bad. This is, and speaking of Hamilton, all I could think of was the "You'll Be Back" song playing
Yeah.
as he meets the king. Ooh.
What was it? 85?
He goes, what is that poor man? You're going to eat him alive? He's like, that little guy who spoke to me? Come on.
Yep, this is where it happens. This is the room where it happens.
And
Yeah.
was it just so uncomfortable because they just fought a war? And so it's like, I'm showing up now as a brand new country and I was a part of your domain at some point. And so
Yeah. I mean, think about that. Think about the circumstances of that meeting. This had not happened. You have a breakaway republic from what was the colonies of the British Crown, now 2 years after signing the Treaty of Paris, which, oh, by the way, Adams has a big part in negotiating that, which we don't really talk about at all in this episode. Now you have John Adams, one of the architects of independence, is now the minister to the King of England. I mean, it is so bizarre. I think they show it so well.
Yeah.
It is a bizarre meeting because no one knew how to act because this is just strange, unbelievable circumstances.
Yeah. I was thinking how brave he was to go into that room because it is so uncomfortable. And like, what could he even expect? Like
that evil eye.
I mean, yeah, how uncomfortable. It's like, oh gosh. I was just thinking about like exes or something. Like you break up with someone, then you have to see them. But this is like on a whole nother scale. Like there was a war between the two of them, and now he's the minister, and he's expected to like entreat with him and be cool. And it just is I felt so bad. And then after, although the meeting doesn't go as bad as then the press afterwards just makes him look like just an idiot.
Yeah. Yep. It's just so, as I put in the notes, delightfully awkward. You just get these big empty rooms, these wide spaces, these two men in the same space just a few years before that would be just entirely unbelievable. It's an incredible story. Just another piece of like how incredible this whole thing is.
Yeah.
That we've kind of glossed over a bit in this, but this really lands that just how incredible that he was in that room in that moment doing that. And yeah, it's just painful to watch
and
in a really great way.
How very British the king is. Like, it's just so like, I'm going to be here because I have to be here, and I'm going to be polite, but I'm going to be very icy to you. Make no mistake.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you get, of course, the British press rips him apart, goes back to calling him vain. He always, he says that they always come back to that attack. And yeah, this is where he starts to get angry at the press. And he's someone that's going to lay down these ideas about, constitutional rights, and is really going to espouse and has utilized the press during the revolution to his benefit and to the benefit of his cause, is someone who is going to be needled by it for the rest of his public career. The press are going to become a major thorn in his side because he is not a super likable guy. He never was trying to be a likable guy. And so the fact that he is just about business and getting things done, he's going to be attacked quite viciously, and he never can take it.
Yeah.
He can never take it. And I get it. As someone who's trying to develop some thicker skin, I get it.
I know. And you look back on these, like that portrayal of him, and it's so tragic, just the human ego, because it could be a totally different, I mean, everything would be a different story, but a different story if he's just like, oh, no big deal, like writes it off, but it's so human to be so sad about it. And Abigail's like, get these papers out of here. We're like, we don't need to see any more of these. And it's just like, she totally gets it that this is not going to go well. She knows who her husband is.
Yep. Absolutely.
He's not going to be the most popular guy.
No. And and this is like the key through line of the book that I'm reading now, which is around here somewhere. But anyway, it's about kind of the president's Adams confront the cult of personality. And, the line of that is like, you get George Washington, who is incredibly popular,
mm-hmm.
who we're about to see be elected and inaugurated as president of the new United States under the Constitution. But you also get Thomas Jefferson, who is someone who is going to run to be a man of the people, representing the farmers, representing, Jeffersonian democracy, this idea of being opposed to a strong central government, being for small government and the rights of the states. And that becomes kind of the rival to Adams, to John Adams, the father. And then you get John Quincy Adams. and Andrew Jackson. And so that's something that's coming down the road as well. But they really were not strong believers in popularity. They did not believe American politics should be a popularity contest. And in that way, they were not big fans of democracy. This is that idea of like, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. They were like, this is a republic. This, like, you can't trust the people. Right. And this is going to be a through line. They talk about it in France. You see Jefferson and Adams and Ben Franklin talking about this. This is going to be the political through line that we're going to see for the rest of the series and for the rest of American history. And here we are, 250 years later.
I was just going to say nothing has changed. I was just like listening to something about nothing is a meritocracy, everything is a popularity contest when it comes to our politicians. And it's so, like, as you were just describing the total scandal that was Sally Hemings, but then you have He's for the People, but he's a really terrible dude. And like, yes, you know, he had good ideas, but it's like, sometimes the smartest and most qualified people don't get the job or don't get elected because they're just not likable. And that's John.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, because it's just like, you know, you think of both Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, you know, they really run as the kind of the people and small government, and then they get into office and like Jefferson's like, you know what, I'm gonna make the biggest land purchase in, you know, history to that point. The Louisiana Purchase. It's like, that's a huge, the federal government is just buying most of the continent, you know. And like Andrew Jackson is going to, you know, end up being like going out, there's going to be a whole almost civil war over nullification, and like he's going to wage war personally with the federal government against South Carolina when they try to secede. It's like, it's just interesting because they run on something and then they end up doing something totally different. Yeah, that's,
cut this if you will, but it's almost like a president who runs on no wars, starting a couple wars. It's almost like
you see where I was going.
almost like a populist guy saying one thing and then doing the next when he gets into office. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
We have talked about this in the past about, you know, we talk about unprecedented. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there's precedent. I think the current environment is unprecedented for a lot of other reasons. But that act and doing that is not uncommon in American history, especially amongst the executives that have run on a similar platform. I think there are some, you know, there's some reasonable comparisons to be made between the likes of Andrew Jackson and the current occupant of the White House.
And then you just have George Washington, who in this series, he does have just like the air of like, oh yeah, you're definitely our first president. No question. No questions asked.
Or is there? We'll come back around on that.
Oh.
In episode 5.
Oh, I love all these teasers I've gotten during this podcast recording.
Yes. Becomes a big topic of conversation between Benjamin Rush and John Adams.
Stay tuned for episodes 5 and 6.
I skipped over this, but I do have a favorite quote.
Oh, please.
From this, which I think is relevant. There's also, this episode continues the theme throughout the series so far. This is where we're going to leave Ben Franklin. We're not going to see Ben Franklin again. R.I.P. Benny. But we've continued this theme that we've had of trying to include all of his famous quotes in one you know, 4 lines of dialogue.
Yep.
So, you know, our country is founded on the idea that we can disagree. It's a good one. Oh. They sneak in you know, we have our republic if we can keep it. Mm-hmm. Another famous one in there. But I think my favorite scene in this is when Franklin, Jefferson, and Adams are sitting and they're talking about the future of the country, about the Constitutional Convention, and the fault lines of American political history, especially in the early, you know, the pre-Civil War years, are all there. They're all there. And that's going to be, yeah, for the rest of the series and the rest of American history, those are going to be the battle lines that we're going to be talking about.
Our floundering fathers.
Floundering fathers. Oh,
My
gosh.
favorite quote that I wrote down was in episode 3 when Franklin says, "You're a good man, Mr. Adams, a moral man, but you are not a man for Paris."
So true. So true.
You're a nice kid. You're a smart kid, but you're not cool enough to hang.
But you are one narrow Massachusetts man.
That's true. Well, these episodes only made me love Abigail more, and your backstory on her just money-making ways was the cherry on top.
All right. So they come back. They leave England. They come back to quite the fanfare in Massachusetts. Coming back as heroes. The family's there. Fun little, not incorrect detail. Something that the film doesn't explore because it would just have to explain it and it's just messy. But Nabby was there with them in France. She was with them. She was with her mother. So Abigail did not travel alone. John Quincy is also there in Paris. And then he returns to go to Harvard. So he was back in Massachusetts by the time that they return as well. So just want to throw that out there. Just a little bit of difference in the timeline, that there were more members of the Adams family. Ha ha ha. Damn it. The Adams family. And now it becomes a family drama for the next couple of episodes. So we're going to see lots of the Adams family. And another favorite scene of mine as we start to wrap this up. Another one of my favorite scenes is when we learn that John Adams is elected vice president. And they just keep saying it over and over again. Vice President John Adams. Vice President Adams. Vice President. They're like trying it on. They're like, yeah, this fits. Yeah, I like this. Just amused me greatly because, as John Adams will discover, just like all of the other vice presidents in history, that it's a terrible, terrible job and no one should want to be vice president.
It's his Veep moment when he's Selena Myers. He's left out of everything.
It's episode 5. I'm just so ready. I'm so ready for you.
I'm excited
to experience episode 5 because, yeah, it's all of that. There is so much Veep energy in episode 5 from literally the opening. So good. You're going to love it.
I'm excited for the Veep energy and the Hamilton rooms where it happened and meeting Alexander Hamilton, because we haven't met him yet. So I'm excited.
Yes. He is significantly less musical.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Forget it.
It's going to be, you're going to be like, really, this guy?
Is there no cabinet rap battles?
No, but there are both incidents that are in the musical of the rap battles. Okay, John Adams is outside the room listening to it happen.
Oh, poor guy.
So, yeah. But it's his own fault, as you'll find out. There's a reason. There's a reason in addition to the Constitution giving Adams no real job except being, sitting in front of the Senate and having a tie-breaking vote. You'll see that Washington fully embraces his lack of constitutional duties.
Stay tuned for next time.
We're going to leave it there. And we are going to discuss episodes 5, 6, and 7 in a future episode. This has been a ton of fun. Molly, I hope you are enjoying John Adams so far. How do you feel just past the halfway point?
I'm feeling great. I'm ready to get into the palace intrigue of politics when we get back, because I know my boy and I see his ego and I think things are not going to be pretty.
Yep. I think you are going to, you're going to have a lot to explore there. So we're going to be talking a lot about ego and Abigail just not being there every time that John gets himself into trouble. So lots more to discuss in the future. But thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Public History Podcast. If you did, I'm going to very gently ask you now, compared to the intro, very gently ask you to please subscribe to the podcast and rate and review. And this is getting very ASMR.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to, I'm embracing it softly, demanding that you rate and review the podcast.
Do it.
Just do it. Just do it. All right. Well, like I said, thank you guys for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk to you again soon.
Bye.